What is the map? It's all there.
FYI, you guys are live on YouTube.
What, a different name? Or-
They were saying
Talk about
Jeff's email
Thank you.
account instead of the town administrator's email account.
How disgusting.
Jeff Nutting
Oh,
instead of town administrator.
So I take it you don't.
Shared opinion. Just
which is fine. Oh, because you can change the depth.
I take it you don't eat a lot of a.
Correct.
That's crazy.
Oh,
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a little weird overlap.
I used to make.
Spoon and
similar-
Nutella?
I was highly confused. I get on the phone with Jeff 30 minutes before that email, and I was like, "You didn't say a thing."
That'll do it. Just like that.
So-
It's out.
When I went to
What
Italy.
is that?
That other night, I mean, the Wi-Fi was really bad.
Really?
They come in,
It's like New York.
yeah, did they say it was
Pistachio.
The Eastbrook.
Yeah.
Lots of,
It
there are a lot of
is the most
people
amazing
look at
thing. But it is so
Oh,
rich
it's like
that you
5 or
don't
6.
have to really,
Someone told me 6. Was that yours?
I think-
like,
yeah.
Keller's rich.
I think we were at 4,
Which
and
are
I got another one.
But
When we went to the,
at least 2 of them are bid agent. Bid.
couple months ago,
people.
last month. See how it.
Yeah, I think one of them is.
Oh, that's worth.
Oh, right. We're going back. to
They don't,
5.
they won't submit a bid.
Right.
No.
They
It's
just-
like.
They,
Oh,
that,
shit.
they're just asking for the
Please
bid,
don't have a
the
sheet.
bid list, the big thing.
They
They
just
just
want-
Oh,
wanted
it
to-
cost me
They
$8
want-
billion.
You got you to get it updates.
Yeah.
We already kind of covered that, or you can just ignore those.
No, I normally do. I did on the Shirley.
Something. But you had to
Yeah,
share.
we just ignore.
because you
They want, they're like,
couldn't
oh, can we get like the,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Fried
like
and
the-
cheese,
Yeah.
yeah.
the
like-
bid analysis? Just-
It's different, but it's up top. Yeah.
Public accounts are even set to do if they want to.
Right.
And then you can.
I'm not.
That's a good point.
Contact accounts, that's-
Right. Yeah, that's actually this one. Contact the owner.
Contact the owner of the bid.
Just leave it.
Speak to town.
Maybe it's just
I like
not on the
that.
site. They did just update the zoning, so they might have changed it, so.
Okay, because yes, usually those are all over here, like that.
Yeah, they just did a summary.
You know what?
I'm like, all right, I got half an hour between meetings.
Oh, okay, those are the,
These are,
those are your.
these are
payrolls.
all the polluters.
Okay.
Okay, that's good.
Are we ready? My great.
Just this. Just special-
Great.
You know, and it's an actual select board.
Why am I offline all of a
Special
sudden?
meeting. I know that.
It is a special meeting.
Literally.
Yeah, because they're normal.
Oh, yeah.
It's next week.
Oh, so then, yeah, then this for this. then.
Jeff is the technical
And my-
difficulty
and
tonight.
my
Say
Wi-Fi
Jeff is the technical
still
difficulty
showing
tonight.
fine.
But we're
I'll
up.
tell you, it's-
It's you.
Well, he sent out a notices to all the abutters, so that's probably why it's busy.
Fair enough. You're ready, so I'm not worried about it either.
Oh, I'm offline too.
Yeah, it just went down. Did you just lose it?
Yeah.
I know. When I meet up.
I'm gonna say that no matter what side the sidewalk's on, those flowers are not standing, because if they go on the church side, the road has to move closer to their property.
It's a,
And those flowers will be
Fine.
fronted, whatever you put in the town anyway, probably not gonna be there.
yeah, it's like time to get over here.
Yeah. look into it.
They're gonna tell the town that they can't do it their own property.
Yeah, like, I've lost flowers before. I told you when you met.
Contacting
They were,
CME.
they were on the sidewalk.
Is it coming back?
So like, they were all like daylilies. right in front of their house. And they were pretty because they hit the stone.
What kind of fish?
I got you. You don't know
I
them.
can see.
You might maintain them,
No,
or whatever.
they were just gone because they hit the sidewalk.
I don't know if they do. Yes. Kind of how it goes.
The thing is like, they didn't want to offer just even a permission thing. We can-
The Zoom just
Have
went
to do that tomorrow.
Yeah, if it's in the right of way, yes, in the town layout, 100%. Then you need a good reason.
No permission needed for that.
Promise not to edge. Since this was so, even though Brittany.
Musical interlude.
We were just before the show started.
That's right.
Troubleshooting couldn't identify the problem.
Be there. Excuse me while we.
So Caroline must have replaced
Technical
the other
difficulties.
guy. Can't remember his name.
The guy in the camera.
It's been so long now.
Can't remember either.
Yes, we do.
How, did you able to answer her question okay on the?
Yeah. It's really the utility pole that costs. That's the reason why it is what it is.
Brittany with her cable.
I actually have Ethernet on this side.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, either one. I have Wi-Fi.
I have spinning wheel of death.
Are you on?
Yeah, a lot of folks.
It might just kick me off. I was.
Try loading.
Oh.
Are you back? Did anyone get back yet?
Oh, look, I have web.
I might have kicked me off.
Oh, hold on, maybe.
Connected to computer and joining webinar.
If you guys Ethernet.
Oh, I did just get back on Zoom.
You gotta stay online. You're gonna be the host, right?
I'm a panelist, so I can share the screen so it goes onto
I got a document up here.
their cable access. So whatever I share here will also be part of the cable
Up,
access.
Are you back up? I'm trying,
Oh, so you don't
but the
technically
meeting
need to be
is still
together.
on. We're just not live now, right?
Oh,
I do the Zoom, so share my screen. I basically gonna do it just to share my screen so they can record and it like
Right now.
whatever it sees.
So close. Just showing the shoes.
Don't put it in yet.
Okay.
Showing the shoes there.
Yep.
Wi-Fi.
This is where we need, why you can't say bad words.
Yeah, we should. If only they would tech. Networks.
Donate some time to the phone.
Hmm?
You want to donate some
Okay,
time
I
to
seem to be back on Zoom.
Oh, yeah, so do I.
Really. Am I connected? It really, yeah, like, we should all be on the wire.
As a backup, yeah, we should.
I just don't want to disconnect.
Right now, I'm on.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are. So this is.
Are we there? Yeah,
Okay, I'm up, okay.
for now.
But, oh,
You know, we only went back to paper, but apparently, you know, the chair doesn't like paper, so.
Never happened.
I know.
You're welcome to print out whenever you wish to print out.
Oh, dear God, no.
are you guys back on?
Mhm.
You're back on?
So all they're, that's rebooting. Which.
Okay.
And that's something we can't do.
Well, that's what I'm like, we should know how to do that.
Mhm.
That's good. Hopefully we'll stay on tonight. Yes.
Mary Porter.
Yes, thank you very much.
Hey, Ben. I'm trying to let it go. We'll see. See how far I can get it.
Okay, gotcha. There we go.
Alright, can we go?
No.
Nope.
No.
Nope. Okay.
Not pretty.
But it'll work.
And even if the Wi-Fi was down, these three machines was like.
Okay.
Are you hardwired? That's what I see.
Yeah, yeah, right there.
Yeah, good time. Campbell, God, these two think we're 7 o'clock.
Really?
Nobody like Campbell ever again.
Yeah, the regular people, like the normal
Just down.
group of people go.
Thank you.
The kids,
Oh, it's
kids,
lovely.
like kids need stuff for them. They always want to go
Wicked
back and do
Flat,
bumper
wicked
boats.
flat.
Mhm.
And then we were like leaving at 6:30, like, well, we still haven't played 5 times. They would say, I would have stayed as long. Parents, please help me out here. Beautiful day.
Did a lot of people show up?
It seemed like less than normal. Yeah, and we had the tent on the side there.
Oh, yeah.
And I always
There it
wondered, like
is.
what that would be. Like.
Cable laptop.
It was much
I like
better.
that.
We had our own.
Like you're kind of more private, right?
It's very
we had our
clear.
own-
It is.
we had our own right inside of our tent. And
Sometimes.
then we had all the tables that were
Other
between
people
the
love
tent and the
not
driveway.
using the tent, like if they're boarded.
Like.
It's like, why is there another town of Berlin?
Shade, shade, stuff.
But actually, it was kind of nice. It was a nice,
Beautiful day.
yeah.
Best day ever, I think. Well, the first one was pretty nice weather, is from what I remember.
Because it was Sunday, right? They had it Sunday.
Yeah,
Yeah, my
Yeah.
like.
Friday would have been, or Saturday would have been up.
yeah, Saturday would have been over rain.
Give me like 3 seconds so I can start the recording.
Okay.
Okay. All right, we're ready to start. Good evening. I'd like to call this public information meeting of the Berlin Select Board to order at 6:40. I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's public information meeting regarding the Complete Streets easements review. This meeting is being recorded by Berlin Cable Access and is also being broadcast live via Zoom and YouTube. Before we begin, I'd like to ask that any property owners or abutters attending tonight, please sign in on the attendance sheet if you haven't already done so. This will help us ensure we have an accurate record of attendance and allow us to follow up with you regarding the easement process. Thank you. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to provide information about the proposed easements associated with the Complete Streets project, to review those easements with affected property owners, answer questions about how they relate to individual properties, and explain the next steps in the easement process. The Complete Streets project has been through several years of planning, engineering, and public engagement. The Select Board selected the preferred project design, and the project has now entered the implementation phase. Tonight's meeting is one of the steps necessary to move the project toward construction. For those who may not have been following the project closely, I'd like to provide a brief overview. The Complete Streets project is funded through a $500,000 Massachusetts Complete Streets grant, along with approximately $153,500 in town funds from the Federal American Rescue Plan, commonly known as ARPA. The purpose of the project is to improve pedestrian safety and accessibility in Berlin Center by closing gaps in the existing sidewalk network, improving pedestrian crossings, and making the areas safer and more accessible for residents and visitors. The project includes new 5-foot sidewalks designed to meet current accessibility standards, pedestrian activated crossing beacons on Central Street to improve crossing safety, conversion of Woodward Avenue to one-way northbound with a sidewalk on the west or residential side of the street. Construction is currently anticipated to take place during 2027. Tonight's focus is on the proposed easements associated with the project. Most of the proposed easements are temporary construction easements that would allow the contractor to smoothly reconstruct driveway transitions and restore disturbed areas after the sidewalks are installed. There is one location involving a permanent easement on Central Street where a sidewalk already exists but was never formally documented. Following the introduction, representatives from Howard Stein Hudson will provide an overview of the proposed easements, review them on the property by property basis, answer questions regarding individual properties, and explain the next steps in the easement process. Now I'd like to turn the meeting over to Chris Lyman and Steve Tyler from Howard Stern Hudson.
Thank you very much. Just gonna share my screen here. Yep. Yeah, so good evening. My name is Chris Lyman. I'm the product manager from Howard Stein Hudson for the Berlin Town Center Complete Streets project. With me is Steven Tyler.
Principal in charge and manager of our Worcester office.
And tonight, I'm just going to do a quick overview of how we kind of got to where we are, what the general design of the product is, and then really go into the easements property by property to explain why the easement's needed and what the effect the easement would have on each property. So I guess the first question is kind of how did we get here? So the town of Berlin was approved for Complete Streets grant in March of 2024. HSH submitted a proposal to the town to design the Complete Streets project in July of 2024. And HSH's proposal was approved by the town in November of 2024. We had a first product kickoff meeting with town officials in February of 2025 and had our first concept design meeting with the town when we basically put together 3 concepts as the town requested. The first being with the two-way traffic, which is how Woodward Avenue is today, with the sidewalk on the residential side of Woodward Avenue. Concept number 2 was switching Woodward Avenue to one-way directional traffic with a sidewalk on the church side of Woodward Avenue. And the third concept was also one-way traffic flow on Woodward Avenue with the sidewalk on the residential side of Woodward Avenue. We presented those concepts to the town. They had some feedback. We updated some of them. And then we had our first stakeholders meeting. At the stakeholders meeting, it really was commercial property owners within the area, along with other town officials, including police and fire department came and reviewed our concept designs and gave their comments and concerns they had of it. We resubmitted our final concept designs in August of 2025, and they were approved by the select board themselves, and then we presented them to the public at the select board meeting in September 8th of 2025. At that select board meeting, we went over the 3 concepts and basically presented what each concept would potentially cost, the potential problems of each concept when it came to utilities and right-of-way requirements, and what those potential conflicts could cause to adding cost to the project itself. After that presentation, the select board approved one of the concepts in their September 2025 meeting. And that concept was one-way traffic on Woodward Avenue with the sidewalk being on the residential side of Woodward Avenue. From there, we moved on to our preliminary design submission. And we delivered that to the town December 5th of 2025. And then in April of 2026, we got a Complete Streets grant extension because we were not going to be able to make the 2026 December deadline. And we got an extension to December of 2027 to have construction completed by December of 2027. And then in May of 2026, we submitted right-of-way property plan submissions based on the accepted preliminary design submission. So I'm generally going to go over the concept and the preliminary design that was constructed from both public feedback and feedback from town officials. Here you have 2 crossings that are going to be reconstructed on Central Street. Both of these crossings will have rectangular rapid flashing beacons, better known as RFBs. Also along this Central Street here, there were some concerns by residents along Central Street about encroaching on their property in this location and potentially taking away parking in front of these residents' properties. And so from that feedback, we were able to actually shift the center line of the roadway a little bit to the north because the lanes were pretty wide in this location. So we were able to make 2 11-foot lanes and 2 4-foot shoulders, which is the minimum required. And it allowed us to save parking on Central Street and not having to take any of the parking on Central Street. That came right from, again, like I said, it came right from comments during those stakeholder meeting from commercial property owners. And then you can see here as you go up Woodward Avenue, we are getting rid of the original slip lane that is kind of on the right-hand corner of Woodward Avenue. And the reason for that is because now Woodward Avenue is going to be a one-way traffic from Central Street going to Carter Street. And so we're able to actually close off that slip lane, which allows the crossing to be shorter, which improves safety and visibility at this crossing of Woodward Avenue. And then as you go farther down Central Street, we also had to tie back into the original alignment of the roadway. So we had to extend a little bit farther down Central Street to the east in order to tie back into the existing pavement markings farther down Central Street. We're also adding a pedestrian curb ramp adjacent to the existing pedestrian curb ramp at the corner of Carter Street and Central Street. There already is one on the church side of the crossing, but there was not a reciprocal ADA compliant pedestrian curb ramp on the other corner of Carter Street and Central Street. So there'll be an updated crossing there also. And then as you go farther down Woodward Avenue, and you can see the sidewalk is on the residential side, we're trying to better tee up the Woodward Avenue and Carter Street intersection. Right now, it was a pretty wide intersection with a utility pole that kind of stayed right in the middle. And we saw it as being a potential hazard for people impacting that utility pole. So if you look at the, I guess it'd be the southern corner of Woodward Avenue and Carter Street, which is the bottom corner. We were able to tuck that existing utility pole behind granite curb, which should protect it from vehicle strikes and from people running into it. It also allows to short up the crossing across Woodward Avenue as you go perpendicular to Carter Street. We're also proposing one new crossing and 2 reconstructed crossings in this location. You have the first crossing, which is on the lower part of Carter Street. And this crossing basically would go from the existing sidewalk that runs on the church side of Carter Street and allows pedestrians to cross to 19 Carter Street and leads right to their ADA accessible wheelchair ramp that accesses to the building. The second crossing, which is the new crossing we're adding, is a crossing from the opposite corner of Woodward Avenue that crosses right to 19 Carter Street and also connects to an existing pathway to 19 Carter. And then the third crossing on Carter Street that we're reconstructing is the one that's all the way to the north, or the top part of the screen. And that is a crossing that would go from the new proposed sidewalk on the north side of Carter Street and allow you to have access to the public library. And we're also reconstructing the existing crossing that goes from 19 Carter to the public library also in this location. We're also adding any missing signage. So you can see there's a lot of new signage going in too. We're adding stop signs where there currently is not stop signs, and also putting in stop lines and crosswalks where there currently wasn't crosswalks at labeled crossings. We'll be adding the one-way directional signs for Woodward Avenue. And again, like I said, also including a do not enter sign now down Woodward Avenue. I also want to point out that this concept in this preliminary design also keeps all the parking on Woodward Avenue, which I know was potentially concerned about removing parking in the commercial downtown area. So now I'm going to go kind of
Chris,
easement
if
by
I-
easement.
through
Go
the
ahead.
chair, if I interrupt you for a minute.
Mhm.
So Chris just did a full overview of the project design and he's about to move into the properties like easement by easement.
Mhm.
And do you have an idea how you might want the meeting to go? Do you want to stop on a property by property basis, or just go through everything and take questions at the end, or?
Thoughts. I guess my thought is maybe go through property by
Property
property
by property.
and let the owners ask
Okay.
questions.
Yep, that works for me. So I'll first go over the easements on the Central Street easement. The first one is a temporary easement that's needed from the town of Berlin Cemetery. This easement's really just needed to do grading at the back of the existing sidewalk that's currently there. We're basically just tying into the existing bit block that's in this location. And this basically just allows us to grade it to make sure that any drainage coming off the property and from the sidewalk goes into the roadway itself and then draining back into private property. There's also a small permanent easement that's required from the town of Berlin Cemetery. I wanted to state before, there's already currently an existing sidewalk that goes through this location. We're basically just reconstructing the existing sidewalk that's in this location to make it both ADA compliant and add a 6-inch curb reveal, which should protect pedestrians from any cars that potentially could leave the roadway in this location, and should make this crossing more visible compared to what it is today. So that small little easement basically is a sidewalk easement that's just required for us to reconstruct a town public sidewalk within private property.
Second.
Just to help the public that's here, could somebody point to
Yep.
what you're talking about, Chris? I don't know how we can do that, but I think it'd be.
I think if you might not really hear me if I step away real quick, just to point out.
Probably not.
So the cemetery one I'm talking about is this property right here. So you have these lighter colors, which is this strip down here. Those, when you see a lighter gray color, that's a temporary easement. It basically means that whatever action's happening there, it's gonna basically stay the same. So if there was grass there before, the grass is gonna remain. anything that was in this location before, it basically says, hey, we're just basically going to use it to recreate it to make it match better into the new proposed. These darker gray spots, which are basically gonna be in front of the gray sleds, those are where these permanent easements are happening. That's basically something where there's gonna be a new sidewalk or existing sidewalk that currently is on private property that really should have an easement because it is on private property and it's a public, technically part of the public right of way. So that's what these gray parts are. So that these two little locations, this gray swatch here and this little, there's a little tiny one that this little arrow is pointing to, this 13 square feet. That's the permanent easement at the town, Berlin Cemetery there. And I can move on to the next property, which is 3 Central Street. 3 Central Street also has a temporary easement here at the back of the existing sidewalk here. Again, that's just to make sure that the lawn of 3 Central Street is graded back in and make sure that no drainage from the sidewalk drains on a private property, stays within the town property. And then again, the permanent easement, which is this big darker gray spot here, is needed because again, there's an existing sidewalk there that didn't have a sidewalk easement in the existing condition. We're making sure that we're gonna get a sidewalk easement in the permanent condition. The reason why we're trying to use sidewalk permanent and temporary easements is because they don't affect the frontage of your property. Basically, you keep the same frontage line, just be a permanent easement for the town that allows them to have access to it and also doesn't allow you to basically build in this one little location of that permanent easement. But it doesn't affect your acreage or the size of your lot, and it doesn't impact your frontage line of your property either. So that's a lot of times why we try to use permanent sidewalk easements is because they don't have any impact to value of the property itself, like changing either the frontage or the square acreage of the parcel. Is there any questions for 3 Central Street at all? Not hearing any, I can move on to 7 Central Street. For 7 Central Street, you can see again here, there's also a temporary easement along the back of sidewalk. In this location, the proposed sidewalk is going to be all within town layout. The sidewalk itself on Central Street, the temporary easements are only needed just again to do that regrading from the existing lawns that are on these Central Street properties to match back in and make sure roadway drainage is going away from private property, staying within the town layout. You can also see here, I want to point out on 3 Central Street, we also need a proposed temporary easement for this driveway. Again, that's the same idea, is to make sure that we're nicely flowing back into the existing driveways. And to make sure that no drainage is draining back down people's driveways, and that all the storm water that's landing on the sidewalk stays within town layout and goes into the roadway and then goes into your drainage system. So that's the reason why a lot of these driveways along Central Street require these driveway easements, just to make sure that we don't have like a weird little hump in your driveway, or there's not any ponding in your driveway. Is there any questions for 7 Central Street? Yep.
Are they all 5 foot wide sidewalks?
Yes, they're all 5 foot. Yeah, so I those are all sidewalks are 5 foot wide on this project.
Larger than they are now,
Correct, yes.
so you'll go into the road.
Yes, yeah, we're taking from the road. That was the whole point on Central Street is originally we had to take from the road to make them 5 foot wide, which is the reason why you were gonna lose parking on Central Street. But from comments from stakeholders, we looked into see if we could shrink down the travel lanes to the minimums that the state requires. And so now the travel lanes on Central Street through this small section will be 11 feet wide. Before they were 11.5 on the, I guess you'd call it the southbound side, and then the northbound side, I think was 12.4. They weren't symmetrical. So we're able to make them symmetrical now on both sides and also keep the parking on Central Street that's currently used. I know for the store that's right there at the other crossing. Is there any questions for 7 Central Street? Yep.
So you're still gonna be able to park in front of them.
Correct, yes, yep, yeah, so all that'll happen now is that you'll see the sidewalk from here, you'll be able to park right against the curb next to that proposed sidewalk now, so there's I believe it's 10 foot wide bay for cars to park there now. So the parking that's there now is remaining, that's correct, it's staying the same, yep. Is there any other questions for 7 Central Street at all? We move on to the next ones here. And I just kind of wanted to put up a schematic. We use this for all the driveways, basically, just kind of show everybody what an easement versus not an easement would mean for a property. Especially at their driveway, because the most thing that comes up the most for private property owners is that you're touching my driveway now, there's water maybe going down my driveway. So our biggest thing for the easements is to make sure that stormwater that in town property is not going into private property. So at the top here, you can see, this is basically a cross section of the driveway, so if you were to stand at the front of the driveway and look right down the driveway, this is kind of what it would look like from left to right. So with the easement, this is the existing roadway that we'll be reconstructing in front of it. Here you have a little apron, this is basically just like a little hump that allows water to be shut off and not come back up the driveway. You have your 5-foot wide sidewalk here that's sloped at 1.5%, which is 88, makes it ADA compliant. And then at the back half, you have us tying back into a driveway here, that ties back into the existing grade of the driveway. You can see without the easement at this location, we don't have much of a problem at this location. It just, you would end up getting this back slope here. So this is the big part that we're trying to minimize here, is that you can see up here, any water that was currently in the town layout in this location is staying within the town layout. It's going towards the roadway. Whereas we don't have this easement, you can see instead of it being 3.3 towards the roadway, it would end up being 7.6 towards the private property. So there would be a potential during big storms where water could jump. We basically always add a lip at the front of driveways to make sure, water at least stays within the roadway. But if you have large storm events, there's a chance that this water could jump this lip of your driveway and go down the driveway and potentially pool in this location right in front of your driveway. You can see the sidewalk is always gonna be 1.5 this way, and you have 7.6 this way, so you might get ponding in the front of your driveway. So this is just an example at 3 Central Street of why an easement is required, to hopefully account for stormwater drainage. Steve, do you mind just clicking to the next one?
Say, Chris, is that a top-down view?
No, so it's more of like a sectional view, so if you were to, it's kind of weird to look at it, but if you were to look, like, so if you were to go to 3 Central Street and stand right at the front of the driveway and look down the driveway towards the house, that you'd be standing right at this location right here. And then as you look down the driveway, this is what you would see. So it's kind of like hard to explain what it is, but it's basically, this is the roadway right here, so you'd be standing right here. If you were to look down at, this is the profile of the driveway if you're looking straight down it. So
So it's a side view, cross section.
yeah, it's a cross-sectional view, exactly.
Okay,
Yep.
okay.
Yep.
When you say easements, you mean
So-
temporary?
Yeah, all temporary easements for these. Yeah, so basically your driveway, the size of your driveway will not be changing. All it's gonna be changing is the approach to your driveway. Again, the width of the driveway is not gonna be changing. It's just making sure that we stop water going back down to private property that's currently in the public property. You want to look at the next one, Steve? So I went over the 7 Central Street. We also have 15 Central Street on this one. So at 15 Central Street, it's the same thing. They're all temporary easements to go along here. Really, they're needed because we're putting in a new pedestrian crossing here. And they're needed basically just to connect as an existing walk that comes out of 15 Central Street. We want to make sure that we connect 15 Central Street to the proposed sidewalk. Then we want to make sure that there's an existing curb that runs right at the back of the proposed sidewalk right now. We want to make sure that we're able to remove that and then actually have a nice grass strip going right up to the proposed sidewalk. And again, same idea, that grass strip will be sloped away from the private property into the public property. You can go to the next one, Steve. And then here's the 7 Central Street easement. As I said, same idea. You have a nice lip here with a nice 9.3 sloping away from the private driveway. You can see here, this dotted line is the existing profile of that driveway. So you can see currently there is a sloping of the driveway that it basically slopes down into the driveway. This again will allow water to stay within the roadway and move to the closed drainage system. Without the easement, you kind of get the same problem you had at 3 Central Street where the water is going to want to come onto the private property. So you can go to the next one.
Real quick, will you repave anybody's end of driveway?
Yeah, so that'll all be new asphalt. So basically, most of them that we are tying into, it'll basically be we'll basically be going 5 feet into the driveway, basically, from where the proposed town middle line is. And that's again, just to make sure that we're able to make a nice transition, and be able to slope the driveway so that public stormwater isn't going into private property. So now we're again along Central Street. We have a couple of easements that are on the church property here. The first one being is this large temporary easement here. Currently, right now, there's actually you have the active slip lane that goes onto Woodward Avenue down at this location. That'll be taken out. The existing utility pole that's in that center island will be put behind curb. We'll tighten up this radius again to make the crossing shorter across Woodward. And that area that was existing roadway for the slip lane will now become a green space And we just need a temporary easement in that location to, add grass in that location. And then you also on the opposite side of the church side on Carter Street, there's a small temporary easement. Needed again at the back of the proposed sidewalk, and again, that's just to tie in, the existing grade to the proposed sidewalk. This location was pretty simple for both of these, because there already is existing curb and there's existing sidewalk in these locations. So it's really just reconstructing sidewalk and making it the 5 foot wide width that's required for this project. And then you have at the corner of Central Street and Carter Street, you would have a small temporary easement. Again, that's just to install the pedestrian curb ramp that's adjacent to the existing one that you can see on the other side of Carter Street on the church property. So that's just needed again, just to regrade into that proposed curb ramp. Any questions on the church?
The
I'm sorry,
question,
I thought you said that we were gonna keep the sidewalk the way it is there. Now, I thought you just said that you're gonna make it 5 feet wide.
Just in this one little section, so if you look at this diagram right here. You have your existing, I think this is roughly a 4 foot wide sidewalk that runs down Carter Street in this location. We're tying in our new proposed pedestrian crossings into it. So you can see in this small little area, you have a 5 foot sidewalk, and then right at this location here, you'll see it'll start narrowing in. So this section of sidewalk will be 5, and then there'll be a small 8 foot transition piece that goes down to 4 to meet in the existing. So most of the sidewalk in Carter Street is gonna stay 4 feet wide in its existing condition. We're just basically taking our 5 foot wide sidewalk and transitioning back to 4 just to blend back into that existing sidewalk. Yes.
Maybe a question for later, but any reason why you can't bring the new into the old and make it all 4?
So, you can only run now with the new ProWag, which is basically the new ADA compliance. You can only run 4 foot wide sidewalks for a set distance. It's normally only 200 feet. And it's only for a good reason. You basically would have to get a variance to get that 200 feet. The new ADA compliance is 5 feet wide. It's the mandatory minimum they ask us, unless you have a good reason not to have it. But then you'd have to go to your access board and request, basically tell them why you can't meet the 5 foot wide minimum. Any other questions on the church parking lot?
So the new curbing that's running there, kind of going around the corner from Central onto Carter.
Yep.
Just concerned about the drainage onto driveway of the church there. I don't know what the elevation is on that curbing, where that's gonna direct water to.
Yep. So this whole slope here will be sloping away.
Yeah, it's more about the, on the.
Up
not
on the
the
corner
Woodard-
here.
Not the Woodard.
no,
section,
the other.
Carter's-
other-
Carter Street.
Oh.
Carter.
Talking about up here.
Yeah, that's new, correct? That's new.
Yeah, that
curbing.
is new, yep. Yep, so the way it'll work now is that any water coming down Carter Street, this location will hit this is vertical granite curb we're putting in, it's not the HMA berm, you see it's gonna be the vertical granite curb, it's a solid stone curb. Basically, once it hits this, it'll basically just come around this corner here, and you have catch basins farther downstream this way.
Yeah, it's just that it's gotta get to there. One of the concerns that we had was potentially having a catch basin at the top of that entrance to the driveway to catch the water coming down Carter Street.
So now Carter Street?
Being done, but anyway, that's,
Okay, yeah, I can definitely take a look at that. To make sure that any water at least will be draining around this corner.
Yeah.
We won't put it, because a lot of times what happens, you get a low spot right at the ramp, which is a spot you probably don't want water. Especially in the winter time, you'll get a lot of icing on occasion. So I'll make sure to look at it again, make sure that any water, we don't have a low spot anywhere around this corner where it's settle on that corner. Any other questions on the church?
So, lower right corner, we've got the Woodward and the Central Creek corner, is that what I'm seeing?
Yep, yeah, so the lower, that triangle down there, the big gray triangle.
All right. Want to make sure we can still turn onto Woodward going westbound, that looks awfully tight there.
Yep, yeah, so so this is a question that actually came up, this is a question that came up actually by the fire chief here, because he was worried about getting his big ladder truck to be able to make that turn. I ran auto turns, which is a software used basically that's very conservative. It basically, the software can do it, somebody who is a normal driver can easily do it. And you're able to get a ladder truck up that turn. I know it looks narrower on the screen. I can go back to the plans after I get through this and kind of show you, but it is probably almost double the size of the existing turn lane that was there before. I also just drove it today, just to make sure I can make the even tighter turn today, and it shouldn't, and I drove a big SUV, it shouldn't be a problem. And like I said, I ran auto turns for both school buses and for, the big, ladder truck. And they're able to make that turn onto, Woodward Avenue. If you're heading, I think you said what, westbound, right? Yeah, westbound, if you're in that inside lane heading westbound, you're able to easily make that right-hand turn, on Woodward Avenue.
Woodward's gonna be one way, so.
Yeah, well,
you don't
and that's
have to-
again, Woodward's also the only way, so before you're used to not having to be able to make that big sweep, you're able to use the entire lane with this time. Woodward Avenue.
Why wouldn't you make a little curve up there instead of coming to a point?
So if you see this utility, it's hard to see, but there's a
Oh,
utility
okay.
pole right on this corner.
Okay.
To move that utility pole is roughly $20,000 just for one pole. So if I'm able to keep the utility pole where it is, it helps reduce the cost of the project. So that's the only reason why it's so tight in that location. I'm trying to get as much room as possible without having to move the pole.
Is there any reason you never considered leaving the east side of the pole and turning the west side of the pole into green? So Bullard would end up with green area in front. Is there a geometric problem with doing that?
It was more where the town layout was. So currently that slip lane that's currently out there actually isn't on town property. It's actually on the church property. And there's not any easement or anything that we could find in the Worcester Registry of Deeds that showed that they had got anything to actually make that. So it was more not having to actually take from the church property, because if we had to put it to the other side, you basically have to, it'd be a taking of that church property. It wouldn't even be an easement because it is, then it would be a public roadway. That would be on private property. That, hopefully that made sense.
So coming up from Hudson, we're gonna turn right onto Woodward Avenue
Correct,
with the pole there,
correct, yep.
not gonna happen.
I ran tons of auto turns to do
I
it.
drive trucks for a living, not gonna happen.
It's 20 feet wide. I can promise you, you're gonna be able to do it. But if a school bus and a ladder truck. can
And
do it.
stay on the right, I drew the ladder truck too. Stay on the right side.
Not
of
the ladder truck, no, ladder truck's gonna have to sweep out, which emergency vehicles are allowed to do.
And if you're in
But
the
the-
wrong lane and you get in an accident, you're at fault.
It's a one-way street.
It's a one-way street.
I know, but if you swing out, turn right on 62 to turn to Woodward Avenue.
Yep.
If you're on the wrong side of the road, you're at fault.
I understand that, but from Mass DOT guidelines, that truck is 100% allowed to do that. Emergency vehicles with their lights on are allowed to go over any line they need to. Make the turn. School buses are not allowed to. The school bus can make that turn without having to go in. It's only emergency vehicles that would be required to have to make that turn. It's only the biggest ladder truck. It would have to go into the opposite eastbound lane of 62 to make that turn. And it barely has to go in the opposite lane of 62 to make that turn. I can also submit auto turns to the town if they want to look at them too. Those can, we have the auto turns for it. So I can put them on plan to show what they
Does
look
it,
like.
yeah, auto turn, take into account the slope, the hill that happens on 62, does it?
Yeah,
Does it take it all those?
It counts for the turning radius of the vehicle, it counts for the speed of the vehicle, it accounts for the geometry of the roadway itself. So if it's super elevated, the turn's gonna be a lot easier to make. We just want to be opposite, because it's super elevated the opposite way, so it just come around. But yeah, it accounts for all of that, and I can even change the parameters a lot of times. Like I said, the program itself is very conservative, so if you can make it doing the program, it's gonna feel very natural for you to make the turn. It's conservative to make sure that if I can do it, the program, it's not like nobody else can do it. It basically, think of it being the, I don't want to say this, but the worst driver to make the turn is gonna be the auto turn software I use. Basically, it's saying that they don't know how to make the turn, it's not a normal turn for them, maybe they're a new driver and they have to make the turn, they're not used to like sweep with their vehicle. That's what the auto turn software is. It really is meant to be conservative, so that if it's able to do in the software, a normal person who drives a truck for a living or drives their vehicle for a living, you should feel comfortable making that maneuver.
Yeah, we got somebody that deals with reality here that just said can't do it, so.
I can show them.
You know.
I can tell you right now, I showed it to the fire chief and
There's your reality.
he didn't have any comments about it either. I showed the fire chief himself, because it was a concern from the fire chief, I'll say right now, it was a concern about him making sure that a ladder truck could get up Woodward Avenue and then also exit Woodward Avenue in both directions too, was a big thing for him. He wanted to make sure that if they had to come from the opposite way down Carter, they could actually make a right into Woodward Avenue and go the wrong way down Woodward Avenue if they had to also. So both corners, both one at Central Street and at Carter Street, for Woodward Avenue are able to fit a ladder truck. And that was a request from the fire chief himself.
Well, sure, and as you just said, an emergency vehicle, you can do whatever you want on the road because it's an emergency,
Yeah.
a construction truck. You're
I mean, I tell you right now, a landscape truck should be able to easily make that. I said an SU-40, which is basically the big enterprise box trucks you see, will be able to make that turn. It's a 20-foot wide section from curb to curb. That is almost double what a residential drive would be. So any vehicle that's pulling into a residential driveway should easily be able to come in. 20 feet is a very wide stretch of roadway.
So that right-hand turn that's there now, the pole's gonna stay there?
Yeah, well, it's gonna be behind curb now, yeah. So there's a pole right now that's basically in an island.
Right.
That utility pole is gonna stay in the exact same location. And then now you turn, and then now the opposite way is pushed back a little bit. That far corner of the opposite corner.
You taking any of the church property on that corner?
No, we're actually technically we're giving back the church property that was currently being occupied by the town.
Taking property from the town hall.
We're not taking any property on Woodward Avenue. It's all temporary easement. Which is weird, it's happening, and I can kind of show you a little bit here. Kind of hard to see, it'll be on the next slide, but there isn't a lot of right of way available on the church side of Woodward Avenue. Basically, the right of way line is right up against the curb. On the opposite side, which is the residential side of Woodward Avenue, there's a lot more right of way from the edge of roadway to the actual property line. There's like, because the great example is currently the sidewalk we're building on Woodward Avenue is in the town rail line. And we're taking currently just a grass strip and making it sidewalk. And there's still room behind that sidewalk. So there's roughly 6-7 feet behind the existing roadway line on Woodward Avenue to the actual property line. That makes sense.
How wide is the right of way?
Not sure what, I know they're all pretty variable. You can see they're all variable. It kind of changes throughout these. There's, like I said, there's some weird property lines currently in the town center. This location. I would say it's probably 30 feet maybe. Variable 30 to 40 feet, but like I said, it is variable. It gets narrower the farther you get down Woodward Avenue. So it starts pinching in. So anything that's closer to Route 62 is wider right of way. As you go farther into up Carter and up Woodward Avenue, the right of way lines tend to come in a little bit. As you get more into the residential part of Woodward Avenue and of Carter Street.
I understand what you're saying, and it makes a lot of sense because you want to keep the pole, it's $20,000, and we don't own that land, the town, the church owns the land.
Correct, yep.
But I'd like us to at least consider the fact that we've been working hard on the 1870 Town Hall and the Bullard House.
Yep.
And it might be really worth our time to consider also, not to mention the trucks, right? That's a big part of our world, having those trucks go there and they come around, they park there, and then they get lunch at the general store. That's like sort of who we are.
Yep.
So if they're uncomfortable with that, it's important to us. And then the other thing is that those buildings are important to us.
Yep.
So if we could talk to the church, and I think there are some of them here, I think there'd be potential for them to be happy with us making that roadway over to this other side of the pole.
So you want on this side?
Yes.
I mean, we can look through it. I can promise you it's gonna be not as wide on this side compared to the other side.
Yeah, but it's would be straight.
Going westbound, I think it would be much harder coming eastbound, or you've been trying to go.
Yeah,
around the
either
pole.
way, you're gonna have a problem with vehicles, because it's never gonna be 90 to any of the vehicles coming. Again, the eastbound traffic potentially could have a potentially easier turn, just because it's gonna be a one-way. But I can promise you, if you put it on this side, there is gonna be a less turning lane width than you're gonna have it on the other side, just because there's not, even if you take some of the church property, you have to start going pretty deep into the church property. I know there's currently a bench there, they have some signs there, they also have an existing sidewalk that goes off the side of the church property, that probably all have to go.
Well,
Already
I think
did
it's worth considering. And I
Okay.
think that's one of the things that we've sort of missed in this process is looking at the thinking that many people have made about how we use that town center. And The Bullard House and the Old Town Hall, well, they've struggled a little over time. We really want them to be used, and if we put the road right up against them, that's not gonna feel very good. It would be much better to have green space right in front of them, or maybe some parking, handicap parking for the Bullard House, for example.
Yep.
And so if that even means paying the $20,000 to move the pole, I think it's worth considering it.
Okay, yeah, we can look at it. Like I said, though, it's gonna be more than $20,000. It'll probably be, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars.
If I can interrupt through the chair, the 20,000 is a pretty low estimate for a pole. Then there's also the coordination with the National Grid. Then there's the timeline to actually get the pole moved. Then there's the making sure that you can, where you can move it, because it has to connect to all the other poles on the road. So you'd be substantially delaying the project if you wanted to go down this route to relocate the pole. Whereas there's a good design right now that works with everything that's in there, and that's up to the decision to, the town, if they want to pursue those alternatives, get another extension for the grant,
I also
do additional design.
I also want to point out also that you have roughly, I think it was described, you have roughly $653,000 to work with. You have a $500,000 complete streets grant, and you have roughly $150,000 that's being used from ARPA money from the town. I can guarantee you that if we did that, it's gonna be more than that 653. So the town has come up with additional money to be able to do that additional work. We got a lot of public feedback. We had 2 stakeholder meetings, we had a select board meeting. And we even had an additional concept meeting with like people, like I said, the fire chief and the police chief. And the whole point is I was trying to create a design that hit all the project goals, but also kept that cost right at that $650,000. So the town would have to come up with either chapter 90 funding or some sort of free cash they'd have to use further this project. And this just happened to be one of the options. Again, we gave 3 concepts, and a lot of it was around Woodward Avenue. A lot of the concepts had to do with what side the sidewalk was going to be on Woodward Avenue. And we gave 2 concepts specifically that had one on the church side and one on the residential side. And we presented to the town, the select board voted on the one on the residential side, and just kind of where we went, and ended up being the cheaper solution.
Can you go down Woodward Ave and start talking about how it affects people?
Yeah, I can do that.
Just through the chair, if I may, just for a minute. Also, our understanding for this meeting is that the design decision has been made. That was made a year ago, and the design has progressed to a final design. And this meeting is talking about the easements, not the
Correct.
design. It's
Correct.
basically refreshing the people of what the design is, but not soliciting comments to change the design. And also explaining to people what the easements are and what's occurring at the properties.
So I was at a town meeting before and I made a comment about having another public meeting with everybody involved about the design. And I feel like, I don't feel like, I know it was promised that we would have another public meeting about this. So I'm unsure why the decisions have already been made and we're not even allowed to have our input at this stage when that was promised at a town meeting and it didn't come to fruition.
Folks had input throughout the
Who's
process.
folks?
We had stakeholder meetings, we had all of the meetings that were talked about. This meeting is for the easements. So we need to go ahead and talk about the easements.
So it doesn't matter what people want.
I think it's hard for one person to speak for people.
So if I got 500 signatures that say that they do not like this plan, you would listen to that?
I think we have a plan that provides positive change and safety improvements
But we should
for the
think-
town
we should
center.
know. You should know based off of who lives here, not one person thinking.
Like I
Chris,
said,
can you continue?
yeah,
Thank you.
so can we go to the next one?
So you're just not gonna consider at all what people.
We have considered, the board voted. We are talking about the easement so that we can make the project go forward, so we don't lose a $500,000 grant, so we don't lose $153,000 worth of ARPA funding that needs to be spent by the end of the year.
Okay, just one more question on it. When I did speak at town meeting, when I was promised that there would be a public meeting about this. And I didn't hear anything about it. I'm, for the future, for future homes, did I miss a letter, an email, something that was supposed to send out to the town in terms of when these meetings would happen?
I can tell you, we had meetings going up to this.
It's not about you having the, how I would have known about it.
They tend to be advertised when there are meetings, they are on the agenda, they are on,
So there were none after the town meeting when I got up and.
I don't believe there were. We have had a huge transition here with the TA not being present. So we are having a meeting now to talk about the plan that was decided.
Decided without.
It was not decided without the public. There was public input.
After you promised.
And with all respect to, like, as a resident of Woodward Ave, with the stakeholder meetings, we were never reached out to a lot like before. When, like, prior to the design, getting ideas, any input, there was never any outreach. And, you know, I can speak for other people on our street as well that were never reached out to. So just to have that on the record.
You too.
The previous town administrator had promised that there would be a meeting involving a number of people here. It never happened. And then the board, who was the town administrator's boss, overlooked that and just went ahead and made your own decisions without getting stakeholder input. That's just not democracy.
Yeah, I really disagree that there was not stakeholder input. But
There was
you're
never
hearing that
final
from more than one
there was a
person.
meeting, yes, but there was
Not
supposed to
just
be a
one.
second meeting after that first input. That never happened, Lisa.
I think the decision was made that this is the best plan based on the funding, based on the engineering input, based on. Engineering doesn't change based on where you live. Engineering facts are the same no matter where you live.
Or cultural facts.
This is going to be a positive thing for the town. I have no doubt in my mind that this is going to be a positive thing for the town.
Woodward, and so, because people have questions about their property.
Yep.
Because their driveway is mostly sloped down and not low.
Correct, yep. So we have Woodward Avenue here. I can start,
You can
With-
skip the town.
we'll skip down. Yeah, so you have 4 Woodward, which is obviously the inhabitants of the town. You can go to also 12 Woodward, I believe it's the town. So we can go to 16 Woodward, next one. So this is a one back seat, please.
What does one back mean? This is where we were.
Yeah, right here, right here. So you have 16 Woodward Avenue right here, which is the first residential property along Woodward Avenue here. As you can see, the sidewalk itself, you don't have a lot of temporary easements that are happening along Woodward Avenue. Again, that's because the sidewalk in this location is able to be constructed within the town layout line. The only small temporary easements you have are right at the driveways. So you have one right here at this 16 Woodward Avenue driveway. And again, that's only to allow for the existing sidewalk to match nicely back into the existing driveway. Steve, can you go like 2 ahead?
Is there any
I'm
way,
here for 16, actually. I have a couple of things I just wanted to mention. And, like our neighbor here, you know, this is really the first opportunity I've had to be present. And, some of my concerns, I mean, some of us have flower beds that exist possibly on this right of way, which you said is variable, so I don't know exactly where it starts and ends, so. I think some people are concerned that those are gonna be impacted by the sidewalk. And one of the concerns that I have, you know, because we have a couple of public buildings, the town hall, and in our case, in particular with the town hall, you know, there, people have often parked, not just in the angled parking along the church, but in front of the houses on the street. And, when that goes away with the sidewalk, one of the issues with our driveway, because it's right next to the town hall, is that, there are people, this happened even today, in fact, that someone drove up the driveway and parked their car in the driveway and got out to go into the town hall and just left their car parked behind our car. So, I mean, I'm worried that if the parking in the front goes away, then we may have even more people parking in the driveway who want to access, who want to get into the town hall. We're losing some of the town parking. So these are some concerns that, you know, I think should be taken into consideration.
Yeah, so I looked at both sides. So when I did the concepts, this will give a little bit of background. When I did the concepts of the sidewalk being on the residential side and the church side. No matter what, see, you know, I'll show it to you. You can go 2 slides, Steve, real quick, just so they can see a little bit better. 2, 1 more, 16. So no matter what I do, you can see here, right at this point is basically where your entrance to your driveway is here at 16 Woodward Avenue. The sidewalk is to be on the church side. The right-of-way line for the church is right up against the end of those parking spaces. So if I was to add the sidewalk on the church side, that area that's kind of, you know, just a grass strip that people park in would become existing roadway at this point. It would definitely not be an area anybody could park because it'd be a one-way at this point. So you'd need to have that lane to allow cars to go through. So I can add signs that say no parking right in the sidewalk itself along Woodward Avenue on, say it's a no parking that allows the town to enforce a no parking. I don't think there's currently signs now.
So what you're saying is, you put the sidewalk on the other side, the roadway is gonna shift
Correct,
to where the sidewalk is proposed on that side now.
correct.
So either way, the people on Woodward on the left-hand side are gonna be impacted.
Yeah,
Because.
it's just
you're
because
gonna
it-
use that 5 feet. That they have some flowers in now.
Correct, and it's just because of how the town layout works. Like I said, the town layout is very narrow on the church side. Basically, the town built right up to the existing church property line. On the opposite side, the town left roughly 6 to 7 feet from the edge of roadway to the actual private property. So the reason why if I put the sidewalk on the church side, all that would happen is those parking spaces basically would shift that 5 or 6 feet farther into the roadway, and then I'd take that 5 or 6 feet from the edge of the roadway on the other side. So no matter what, and that's the reason why that choosing the residential side is also cheaper option, because instead of having to reconstruct both sides of the roadway, in the residential sidewalk side, I don't have to reconstruct the sidewalk side of the roadway. I don't have to touch the church side. Whereas if I was to put the sidewalk on the church side, not only would I have to put the sidewalk on the church side, I'd also have to extend the roadway all the way up almost to the property line itself. And that's to make sure to make sure that people can pull in and out of those diagonal parking spaces. When we're talking about longer trucks, like pickup trucks, it's also to make sure that if an emergency vehicle has to get through there, there's room from the back of the parked truck to the edge of the roadway.
Well, I think one of the concerns was about if we're losing parking for public buildings. I mean, the town rents the town hall for public use. And so people who come to use it, who may not know this is somebody's private driveway, for example, or who are losing some parking that is where the sidewalk now will be, you know, it means the project is losing some public parking for public buildings.
Yeah, so
That's some of what's happening with it.
whether it's actual public parking or it's used as part of the public parking, I'm not sure what the town's regulation is on that. I know for the parking specifically on Central Street, it technically wasn't regulated parking, but it was something the town asked us to keep there because it was a place where people pulled up out of trucks specifically and went into that small general store that's right there.
I mean, we frequently had the police parking on that side of the street. That's not uncommon.
Well, they'd be parking the wrong way on a one-way street.
Pardon me?
Under this plan, they'd be parking on the wrong side of the street.
Right, well, they wouldn't be
And they
parking,
can't park there
period.
because.
And as I will honestly, as you're approaching the first 2 town buildings right there will still be parking in front of those because the roadway is wide enough there. It's really when you get between the angled parking and the private residences where it gets really narrow to begin with. I can personally say right now, if you're going down Woodward Avenue and you have cars going both directions and there's cars parked, there's not a chance that 2 cars can make it past those 2 locations, especially as you go up closer to like 24 Woodward Avenue. So I can tell you right now, it's already a pretty constrained situation. I personally probably wouldn't have had parking on that because it's gonna cause a constrained situation. If there ever was an emergency on Woodward Avenue, I can promise you that if there was cars parked on this side and there's cars parked on the other side, I would be shocked if a fire truck could make a maneuver through that small space, especially if you go farther up Woodward Avenue towards the Carter Street intersection. It's already pretty tight now. Just driving it today, and I drove it just today.
Just a comment, I'm not in the butter, but I've worked for several years, since we started the craft fair at the town hall. And I also worked on the town hall and we're getting lots of people and activities in there. And we're trying to bring that back, but this doesn't help.
Okay. So like I said, at Woodward Avenue, the reason why the easement is required, so I showed easement at 2 locations. 16 Woodward Avenue has steps in front of it. It also has a driveway that slopes drastically into the roadway. I would say putting the sidewalk on the side also helps actually raise the driveway a little bit, so you're actually gonna have less of a steep maneuver into the roadway. If you look here with the easement, the existing slope down the driveway would be 11%. It would hit the 1.5% sidewalk, and then you have a 15-degree apron, which is common standard for all residential driveways. This ensures that no water basically backflows down residential driveways. The same thing with the steps. The steps now will have a 15%, 1.5% slope, and then it'll also be a 1.5% slope from the stairs to the sidewalk itself, also leading to those both stairs. Without the easements, you can see the grade doesn't really be affected on the driveway part, but it gets more affected on the steps part. You can see at the 1.5% slope of the sidewalk with the 6-inch curb reveal, you actually end up getting water sloping back towards the private stairs. So that's the main reason for the easement, both at the stairs and at the driveway, is really to make sure that, again, water is not pooling on private property is a big part of this. Next one, please, Steve. So now we can go to 20 and 24 Woodward Avenue here. Really the only impact of 20 Woodward Avenue is the driveway itself right here. It's only a temporary impact, same kind of 16 Woodward Avenue. It's really just to kind of make that driveway seamlessly go back into the proposed sidewalk. And the same for 24 Woodward. It's also for the existing driveway to make sure that it nicely goes back into the proposed sidewalk. And then at 28 Woodward Avenue, you have 2 temporary easements. One of them is for the driveway at 28 Woodward Avenue, and the other one is to connect to the existing stairs in front of 28 Woodward Avenue.
Question,
Yep.
we're at 24.
Yep.
There's, on 20, there's a tree, like a very large.
Yeah,
pine
large tree, yep.
How is like digging into, like, how is that gonna affect the tree and its root systems and like?
Yeah, so if you go, I'm gonna show you just so you can kind of get what I'm saying. If you can go one up, Steve, just so I can get like a cross-sectional view of the roadways of the driveway itself.
Just to
This is
point out
today.
where the tree is, the tree is in the lower corner of this
It's right,
driveway right
this one
here.
right here. I remember being on site and kind of having somebody talk to me saying, please don't touch the tree. I do remember that.
Yeah.
So this is the cross-section of driveway for 24 20 Woodward Avenue. So basically all that's happening is you can see the existing roadway line is here and it kind of cuts right through here. So all this was either proposed pavement already, which means when they dig it up, it was already disturbed for your driveway before, and they're basically just gonna be relaying over that disturb. So there shouldn't be any roots in the middle of that HMA asphalt itself. Basically, all they're gonna do is they're gonna cut it through, and if anything, it's actually gonna not cut your driveway, it's gonna raise your driveway and flatten out a little bit. Which you can see kind of in this area here, and then this area here, it's the existing, kind of hard to see, but the existing surface of the roadway is kind of by this black line here, and the new surface of the roadway is gonna be, or the new surface of the sidewalk is gonna be about 2 to 3 inches higher than it is currently. So there's a good chance we're not gonna impact any roots because we're basically already building on top of the existing surface itself. And like I said, for the driveways themselves, we're showing a full driveway reconstruction. But if it's good material under your driveway, the contractor themselves will not disturb that because we prefer compacted gravel to begin with. So if they see that it's traveled, compacted well, we're not gonna disturb it, which then will allow it to settlement in the future. A lot of times contractors, if they see good material under your driveway, they're gonna leave the good material and not disturb it because it's already been compacted by you guys driving over it for X amount of years. But if it is bad material and they're worried that it could cause to settlement, they will replace it with fresh gravel base. But I have a feeling that most of the time they see driveways and the material under it is a good gravel base. So there's a very low possibility that they'll have to impact any of those root systems to that tree because we're either building above the existing roadway, the existing grade in those locations, or we're basically reconstructing HMA's driveway that's already there.
Will there be like transitions, like I know some sidewalks, like if it goes in, so if you're like going along and it dips down for a driveway and then it kind of dips back up, is there gonna be any of that?
No, so that's what so we looked at those potentially to not have as many impacts to driveways. But this one will be a sidewalk right through the driveway. So you can see here, if you're coming along, you're talking about normally if we did what you're talking about and what she's talking about is basically the roadway, the sidewalk would dip all the way down to the existing roadway grade. Which means that if you're walking on the sidewalk, you're going up, down, up, down, up, down. This sidewalk is built so that that sidewalks go through the driveway transition. So you can see here, that big down she's talking about, that 15%, where are you doing it in the apron of the driveway? So basically the sidewalk is gonna stay consistent, the same grade the entire way along Woodward Avenue. Obviously, it'll be at the slope of Woodward Avenue, but it won't be like a drastic up or down. It'll stay pretty much a constant slope of the existing roadway next to it. And that's the reason why in this location, these sidewalks will get narrowed down to 4 feet just at the driveways, and that's just to ensure that we have enough room to keep it ADA compliant, but also make sure that cars aren't scraping as they come into their driveways. It's where you get that 15% apron there. Allows for those sidewalks to stay at the same level the entire time. So you can just walk and not have to worry about going up and down and up and down at each driveway.
How can you put 4-foot sidewalks there when you can't somewhere else?
Because this is accepted by ProWag and ADA. They allow 4-foot wide sidewalks through driveways specifically, because it's an area where you're not gonna be making any major maneuvers. And it's only allowed for a very small transition. If this was like 50 feet wide, you're not allowed to do that. I would actually close down the width of the driveway, so.
When you talk about the construction of the sidewalk through the driveway space. And it not disturbing because you're above grade, what about green space that's being, that the sidewalk is going through? You talk about the tree roots and so forth, aren't you going through existing non-paved areas?
We are, but you have to think that non-paved area is 6 inches lower than what the sidewalks can be. Because right now you currently don't have curb on Woodward
So
Avenue.
how far down do they have to go to get to base material? They can lay a sidewalk on it.
So the gravel base is normally 8 inches, and then you normally have a 1.5 and a 1.5 inch lift. So you're looking at roughly 11 inches, of actual depth.
Not like 3 feet of rocks.
No, it's not 3 feet. It's maximum normally a foot for sidewalks. Driveways, they tend to go a little bit deeper just because they're gonna be vehicular traffic. But like I said, if they come along and they're digging up that small section of driveway and they see good materials, they're not worried about settling, they're just gonna leave that material. They do the same thing with a lot of the sidewalks that are existing too, they're reconstructing. They see good material under the sidewalk, they won't disturb that material. Because it's already been compacted over time and it's actually a better base material than replacing with new.
Stepping back to the mailbox cluster that's between 16 and 20 Woodward Ave.
Yep,
How will it be impacted?
Yeah, so it's not gonna be impacted. That's gonna be at the back of the sidewalk. I know that was one thing that we wanted to make sure that people had access to that constantly. So now if you actually go back one slide, I think you can see it on this screen. Might be one more back. I think it's on the opposite corner there. It's on the kind of corner of.
Between 20 and 16.
Yeah, it's between 20 and 16. Let's see. Yeah, so it's right here. So see, this is the mailbox pad right here. We're actually making a little pad that goes from the sidewalk to the mailbox location itself. So yeah, so that'll stay in the same location. We'll just put a nice walking path from the sidewalk to them. It'll be like, I think it's a 4 by 5 foot. So it's like 4 foot deep by 5 foot wide slab.
What about existing mailbox? I know 28, it has an existing mailbox, will that just be?
Yeah, so those will be removed and reset back into it. They'll probably end up, since it'll be a one-way location, we'll probably end up turning them so they'll be facing the direction of travel instead of being straight out, so they have less impact of both being hit by a plow at night. So if they stick out on the roadway, they'll kind of get hit by things. Also, it stops people from actually running into it, and it takes up less space if you keep it more this way. And since it's gonna be one way of travel, it's easy for the mail person to reach out their hand with the mail.
Would this be an opportunity with all the construction for people who don't have mailboxes to switch and lay in mailboxes? This,
That would be up to
I mean,
the town. I have no knowledge of
That's
that.
the post
Post
office.
office.
Yeah.
We don't choose, it's the post office.
yeah.
Yeah.
Certainly, I think we talked about that before. I think that's worth having a discussion with the post office.
And, yeah, but again, if you end up winning that, you had to put. You want to put your mailbox in the sidewalk, you would end up having to have somebody have to hugger through that and be able to set it to a sleeve, basically. So if you have that conversation soon and you end up getting it, you can let the town know and they can let us know to make sure that we include a sleeve to be able to set a mailbox in that location. Steve, can we go, I did 20, I want to go to 24.
Sure, I'll fast forward, and just if I may, through the chair on the mailboxes. That's a pretty after the fact addition. You can basically core right through the sidewalk and make the hole for a mailbox. So it's not an invasive procedure. And it's not critical that it get done first. It'll look pretty much the same even if you do it after, because you're gonna core and put that post and stuff in.
Yes, just if you do know about it, it's gonna actually be there, I'll make sure that we can at least do it during the project. But like you said, if you have to do it afterwards, it's a pretty simple process.
Yeah, my understanding is the US Postal Service does not move rapidly.
Yeah. One more, Steve. So yeah, we just did 20. Is there any questions on 20 at all, other than what I already talked about? Not, I can move on. Huh?
Pretty good so far.
Can you go one back, Steve? I just want to go over the 28 easements. So here you have 28,
Could you go back to 24?
Yep. 24, yes. Yeah, so you can see 24 is really not greatly impacted whether there's an easement or not, just because of how flat your property kind of is to begin with. Again, we would just do the easement just to make sure we're not causing any drainage problems. But if you didn't want the easement, you can see the sidewalk does match in pretty cleanly into your existing driveway. And that's because your driveway, out of all the driveways, one of the more flatter driveways on Woodward Avenue.
How long does a temporary easement last?
Normally it would end to the time of construction is complete. A lot of times like, what can happen is you can either set a date, or it could be, you know, in 30 days, 90 days. You can set, sometimes people will have them for, they're not sure how long construction be, they could say 5 years, but it could be set by whatever the town basically wants. It'd just basically be an agreement for that temporary easement saying we'd be, you know, occupying this area during, you could even say for the length of construction. But a lot of times temporary easements go away once construction's finished. Yeah. Next slide, please. So for 28 Woodward Avenue, there's 2 locations that we're looking for to put easements. One is obviously at your driveway. The second one is also at there's existing stairs that come out of 28 Woodward Avenue. As you can see, the driveway is actually the one that's greatly impacted by this. You can see, coming out of the driveway, there's currently a slope of 21.5. That would meet into the 1.5% sidewalk, and I have a 15% driveway apron. If we didn't have that easement, we just had to build a sidewalk within the proposed town layout. There you, I mean, 53% is like very steep. You're talking about, that's very steep, right? That that's not good for your car. It's also potentially gonna have fast moving water there. You could have erosion happening on the sides of your driveway. The water would be coming down. It's a pretty steep slope, and it's just because we only have about a foot of town layout to try back into the driveway. Whereas if we are able to go into through a temporary easement into 28 Woodward Avenue's driveway, we're able to flatten out a lot more. I can even go a little bit higher into the driveway and even flatten out that even more. But you can see it's you know, the slope of the driveway would double basically. And that's I can tell you right now, that's not a good slope to have. Just for the health of your car. But for the stairs themselves, the stairs really aren't impacted much. And that's because the property line basically is almost right at the stairs. It's a little bit in front of the stairs. So we just tie in a little bit later into the stairs. But it basically would just be, the stairs would be roughly at the same grade as the sidewalk in front of the stairs, 28 Woodward Avenue. We can go to the next slide, which is gonna be 19 Carter and the library. So at 19 Carter, we're doing both permanent and temporary easements. The main reason for the permanent easement is because just like on the corner of Central Street and Woodward Avenue, is there's part of the public roadways actually within 19 Carter Street's property. And we did an extensive record search with the town and actually with 19 Carter, seeing what they had on file, along with the Worcester Registry of Deeds. And we couldn't find any easements that allowed for this roadway to be here. So basically there'd be a permanent easement put at the corner of 19 Carter, which would just enclose basically just the sidewalk. And the sidewalk in this area is gonna basically take from part of the roadway there. I know there was concerns about taking, you know, shrubs and plants. There's currently at 19 Carter, there's currently a curb, basically a landscape curb. This is the back of the roadway. Basically the sidewalk will start at that and move into the roadway. So if you look at 19 Carter, you look at that curve, basically the sidewalk will start from the back of that curve and move out into the roadway. So any of the plantings on the other side of the curve will not be impacted. It will be just
That's
be,
already very narrow, and they
Yep.
park there. And I'm gonna tell you, a single car cannot get through on nights when there are events.
They park,
That's actually very.
they park right on 19 Carter.
They do, they park, yes.
Okay. So
They don't actually park there. They do. I live on that road. They absolutely do. Whether they're supposed to or not, they do.
So either way, I would definitely advise the town to at least get a permanent easement for that location, and that's just because there's already roadway that people drive on. That's technically 19 Carter property. So again, I know this came up, I know there was some people worried about, impacting the plantings here, so I really focused on not impacting any of the nice plantings that are in front of 19 Carter. So I made sure that I could, at least keep that existing curb, that landscape curb and the plantings, and then also put in a 5-foot sidewalk. If you actually look though, so this gray line right here, it's kind of hard for people to see, but this is the existing edge of roadway that kind of comes along. So really the only area we're stealing a little bit of, I guess you'd call it feet. Oh yeah, you guys see a little better?
Yes.
You guys see a little better? Or maybe if I stand on this side, it's a little better. So this gray line runs right here. This is the existing edge of roadway line. So really the only part we're really stealing a little bit of roadway is roughly a 18-inch section right here. From where the existing roadway begins currently and where it's gonna begin. So we're really only stealing about 18 inches of the proposed roadway on the corner of 19 Carter. And like I said, we also need a temporary easement down here, so we can put in actually an ADA accessible ramp down here that would lead right into 19 Carter's ADA accessible ramp they have on their property. We're also gonna put a crossing that would connect to there's also another existing path that would connect to 19 Carter. And then we're also putting another crossing that across from 19 Carter to the library itself. So we're trying to basically to allow for all sorts of people walking along, whether they're ADA accessible, they need to be accessible to be able to either reach 19 Carter or reach the library or reach the church property through all three of these crossings.
Chris, if I might.
Yep.
Patrick, go ahead.
The temporary easement that is not necessary. We're not gonna touch the gardens that are there, or the trees.
Yeah, no, we're just putting that because there's a potential that we basically use temporary easements because it's not so much that we're touching the property, it's that somebody might step on the property. So a lot of times, if I know I'm going right up to a property line, I'll get a temporary easement just to make sure that if a construction worker needs to stand on that side, maybe to lay down the sidewalk or something like that, they can stand on private property legally. And it also allows us that, say if they were stepping, they caused some damage along there, whether to the mulch or something like that, it allows me to, reset that and then feel it graded out nicely again. 'Cause I can tell you, there's probably a chance they're not gonna be always standing on the roadway side, they could be getting in here just to lay down, any part of the sidewalk in that location.
So Chris, that all makes sense, but I have a more foundational question, which is, why are we putting that little piece of sidewalk in?
Yeah, so I know this came over at the stakeholder meeting a lot, and also came upon when we met with the towns, they want to make sure that there was a lot of connections to the different community areas and meeting spaces. The library being one of them, 19 Carter being another one, the church property being another one, and then the two town buildings on the corner of Central and Woodward was another one. So we basically wanted to make sure that we could connect all those properties through a sidewalk network.
So, okay, yeah, that's helpful, thank you.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. So this is how it looks. So basically, you're able to access both the library, the church property, 19 Carter, and then one point back, you'd see you'd be able to connect to the old town hall over here and the other town building up here. So basically, we're just making sure that you can go between all these local community meeting places safely on a sidewalk and within a marked crossing.
So if we can stay on that,
Yep.
that particular slide, yeah, but this is what that puzzles me because, you've got 3 crosswalks across Carter Street there, yeah?
Yep.
And if we look at, you think about how people move and so on, so that handicap parking that's at 19 Carter kind of serves the 19 Carter property, and then the handicap at the library kind of serves the library.
Mhm.
Why do we need that little crossing and sidewalk? We could still have 2 crossings on Carter, one going to the library, one going to 19 Carter, and we have a crossing that would be upgraded between the Carter and the library. I don't get that middle one.
Yeah, so this crossing originally was not in the concept plans. It actually came from a concern about exactly what you're talking about flow of people walking. We saw that there was it was basically people were saying if they're walking along the sidewalk on Woodward Avenue, they're potentially probably, if they want to get to 19 Carter, they're probably not going to cross this way, just across this way. There's a good chance they're gonna walk along and just walk across, because there is a path, you can kind of see right here. There is a path that goes into 19 Carter. The same idea, if they want to get to 19 Carter, they're probably not gonna walk down to the library, cross the library, go up the library. So this crossing was added from civic comment saying that if people are gonna be crossing there probably anyways, just because of how people walk and they try to pick the shortest path, why not have a protected crossing there?
So like, you know, that's why we like the church side sidewalk,
Yep.
because that is how people operate through the center of town, that's how people go. That's, we don't like the sidewalk on the residential side, because that's really not, people do come from the church side into the 19 Carter properties. I don't know, I still don't, you know, I don't get that little bit of sidewalk there that, I can see your point, you're connecting crosswalks, but, do we need it? And what does that do to the cost of the project? Right, so.
You talking about adding the crossing or adding?
About that whole construction in front of 19 Carter.
19 Carter.
That piece of sidewalk, yeah, that's what and I'm not, I am on the board at 19 Carter, nobody authorized me to ask this question, but I'm asking it because I'm looking at it and thinking about it. About how people use this space.
Yeah, so the sidewalk in front of 19 Carter, this request to make better connections to 19 Carter itself. Again, if 19 Carter didn't want to give easements, I could remove the sidewalk there. If that, you know, was what the town wanted or what 19 Carter wanted, if they didn't want a sidewalk in front of their property and we couldn't get the easements from them, the option would be just to remove this, and you'd still have technically a connection to 19 Carter. It just would be a less direct, you either have to go through 19 Carter's parking lot on this side or 19 Carter's parking lot on this side from the library.
Chris, thank you, I'm being advised and I'm the minority view, I got people.
Yeah.
I'm just letting you know that, but maybe I'm not.
Did I hear you correctly in that same sidewalk at the radius on Walnut Street is taking road space on Walnut Street,
Just barely, so you can actually see it better here. So
barely being a foot or
Yeah, like 18
barely being inches?
18 inches, like so a foot and a half, so you
How
see,
wide is that street now?
farther down here, I don't know the width here, it's pretty wide here, this is probably 30 feet across here, you can see this is a pretty big radius for a residential, street.
The crosswalk, how?
Oh, how long is this crossing?
No, the one on Walnut.
The one on Walnut, I can't tell you off the top of my head how wide that crossing is, but the width of that is not changing at that location. So you can see right in this location, so you have the existing roadway here, you go straight and go right into the existing roadway right here across this driveway.
Okay.
So the curb is staying right at where the existing edge of roadway, which is this gray line here, and then continue to the driveway and hit into this gray line here.
That section is not that wide.
Yeah.
It's actually very
The
narrow.
18 inches actually happen, it's hard to see, but you can see this gray line right here above my finger. Between that gray line and this dark two lines here, that's where they're really like taking from the roadway.
Okay, so the
It's not really happening farther down Walnut, it's really happening just at the exact corner of Walnut and. Yeah, right at the radius. We're basically, the radius is getting a little bit tighter in that location, but this radius in this location already is a pretty large radius.
Yeah, it is out in the middle, but
Yeah.
once it actually bottlenecks somewhere.
Yeah, bottlenecks as you get farther down.
Mm.
Yep. And that's the whole reason why also you can see we're adding a stop line onto Walnut Street, and the whole reason why the stop line is set a little farther back is to allow for any vehicles making this
You
turn.
can't see it from where that is.
No, so the whole point of stop line is you can stop there and then you just proceed with caution forwards and then be able to check. It's basically the stop line is saying you at least have to stop at this location to make sure that there's no cars coming into Walnut Street, just for how tight Walnut Street is. Once you see as a driver that there is no traffic coming into Walnut Street,
You
can.
can't see that from that.
No,
stop.
you can see a car here though. What I'm saying is like, if the car, it's only for a car making it right here. Basically, if there was a big truck, say a moving truck, or, I mean, it could be a fire truck even. If you're stopped here and there's a fire truck coming at the same time and they have to make this turn, they're already gonna take this space here. So we just moved the stop line back, basically to allow for this, I call this no man's land space here. Basically allow for any vehicle to make a turn in any large vehicles. Again, you can stop here and then you are legally allowed to progress forward and
A
stop.
large vehicle is not gonna make that turn with another car there, anyway, the way it is.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, it has a
Yes,
better
won't
chance
happen.
of making the turn back here than it does if your car is here. Cause the biggest point of your connection here is the apex of this radius. So we just moved the stop line back. You didn't have a stop line before, there also wasn't a stop sign in this location. We're just required that with the stop sign, you have to put a stop line. in the safe spot to put the stop line's location is A, behind the crossing, because it allows you to stop and look, see if somebody's crossing. And then B, and make sure that you're not sitting out in the middle of the intersection with just vehicles making. potentially
That's the
vehicles
only way to see is in the middle of that intersection.
No, I know, so what
Coming from either direction.
But I'm saying,
Because of
If
the
I can interrupt through the
trees,
chair,
building.
the placement of a stop line does not mean the place where you can see everything. The placement of a stop line is where you're supposed to stop in a safe manner to be able to visualize what's going on in front of you, such as whether or not there's anyone going across the crosswalk, whether or not there's any vehicles turning. Once you observe that's not the condition, then you're able to move forward from the stop sign to where you're able to see your visibility and see the direction of the road, both directions. You have plenty of intersections that are treated that way in this community. You're certainly used to dealing with stop lines and that your visibility point is in front of them. It's common because that's the standard for the design. We stop you where the safe point to stop is, not where you can see everything. Sometimes they're the same, but sometimes they're not.
yes, so what Steve was saying, is you basically would stop for a car here. I agree, you could not see both this way and this way from that location. You can see what's in this small area right here. So once you stop there, legally, you're allowed to progress to this location here. And if it's clear as you're pulling through, you're allowed to make that maneuver, because you already made your legal stop. If there's another car coming that you couldn't see farther down the roadway, you're also legal allowed to again yield again to that pedestrian, to either, whether it's a vehicle, it could be anything, but front vehicle. It just, this stop line's here, just basically it makes you stop there, you see if there's pedestrian coming, if there's no pedestrian coming, or there's no
So
vehicle,
every crosswalk needs a stop sign to see if there's a pedestrian coming?
only for ones that are at intersections. So you can see you have a stop line here at this intersection, you have a stop line here at this intersection. It's only at ones that require an actual restricted
Okay.
stop. These ones, these legally, you have to stop at a crosswalk no matter what, on a main right of way, or on any right of way. If there's a marked crossing, you legally have to stop no matter what. We only do stop lines, but you're legally allowed to stop entering if there wasn't a crosswalk there. So we basically normally always go stop line and then crosswalk.
Chris, just to Kate's point there, so we have a stop line.
Yep.
Are we planning does this plan include a stop sign? at
Yep.
that corner?
Yeah, so any sign you see in this bold color here, and it's more of a black color, those are all proposed new signage. So we're actually adding a lot of signage, because currently there's not a lot of signage out there.
Okay, so my specific question, there would then be a stop sign right there at the corner of Walnut and Carter at the library.
Yep,
Stop
yes,
sign.
it's gonna be right, there's gonna be a stop sign right there. I did just drive by today, I see they put in a retaining wall there, so I have to take another look at placement of that stop sign,
I'm
but
still not clear, there's a stop line.
yeah, and
Is
then
there a little red? box?
yeah, so it's hard to see, but there's a big black dot right here.
Uh-huh.
That's where the stop sign would be located. There's
So the stop sign and the stop line are at the same place?
yeah, they have to, yeah, legally they have to be perpendicular to each other. So you have the line, you have the stop line here, and then right next to it is the stop sign.
Are there any constraints on parking in the vicinity of that stop line and stop? sign?
No, I made sure, so currently the library parking, so you have the path that goes up to the library here. This is all parking to the library here. There's a big concrete curb that currently is in front of the library. I'm taking from that concrete curb to put in the crossing. So I'm not affecting any of the current existing library parking. And also I did see this put in the retaining wall. I just want to make sure that I'm not gonna impact the retaining wall too. I just took pictures of it today, when I drove by.
Was there a constraint on parking? Is there a certain distance from crosswalk where you cannot park?
Yeah, there is. Normally it would be 15 feet, but that's that's roadway parking. This is private parking. So
Okay,
the-
15 feet roadway parking.
Yeah, so if you go 2 slides back, I'll actually show you an example of this on Central Street. Yeah, so right here,
Which one, Mike?
this one right here. So if you look down here, you can see there's a hashed area box right here next to the crossing. That hashed area is because you're not allowed to park that close to the crosswalk. And that basically, that's a 15-foot offset that allows pedestrians to be more visible to the roadway. So you're not allowed to park within that 15 feet of the proposed crossing. And that's a Mass UT and it's a legal standard.
So we're looking, that's sort of in the general store.
Yeah, the general store, and then a lot of people park right along this area in front of these residents. Basically, we put a 15-foot no park box, basically to allow for safer crossing for pedestrians. Basically, they're more visible, they're not hidden behind a vehicle that's parked right up against the crossing.
Thank you.
And on the other approach.
Yep, yeah, and you can see, we did the same thing on the other approach too here, so we did it on both corners. And that is only applicable to on-street parking, so if you have like private driveway parking, That's not the same standard. Because technically they're outside of the roadway.
Okay, so those hash marks are only on the east side of the crosswalk across 62 and not on the west side.
So we have on both sides, so we have them down here and we have one up here.
Okay, but.
Because more, if you're coming westbound here, if you're a pedestrian, you're more worried about a vehicle blocking your sight that's coming this way, so that's why we block on this side, but don't block on this side, and vice versa. When you're coming this way, you're more worried about not gonna see a pedestrian here coming this direction.
So as a pretty good pedestrian
Yep.
using that crosswalk, I can tell you, when big trucks park in front of the church,
Yep.
you can't see what's coming towards Hudson, what's going eastbound. You can't
Yeah,
see
so you're basically saying if they park here,
Yeah.
you're saying,
Yeah.
and you're crossing here, they can't
Yeah.
see you when you come this way?
You have to walk out into the road to
Yep.
be able to see what's coming. So I'm curious that the regulations of the guidelines here only have those hash marks on one side of the crosswalk.
Yeah, so we have two things that can kind of circumvent that. One, we're putting in a rapid flashing beacon here. That's the one where you press the button and the lights flash. That, if you press it on this side, it activates the lights on both sides of the street. So at least we'll be warning people who are coming eastbound, there is a pedestrian entering the walkway, but also, as you're entering a crosswalk, it's also your duty as a pedestrian to make sure you're still looking downstream. So all this box does is make sure that you're able to see downstream to start your crossing, and then once you're actively in the roadway, you should start be looking on the opposite direction, which in the middle of the roadway, you should be able to see all the way down. Cars coming eastbound down Central Street. So that's the reason why they only have you do it on the near, we call them the near sides of the crosswalks, because it'd be basically you entering the crosswalk is the most dangerous part on both sides, because that's where basically the car is not gonna see you right staying outside of the roadway. You're gonna be able to be extremely visible. Once you're actively in the crosswalk, you tend to be a lot more easier to be seen by vehicles. And again, with the rapid flashing beacons, that should also be alerting drivers that there's somebody in the crossing. So we try to make these crossings, again, I know some of these crossings are in tough locations, there's a lot of cars going through, there's a lot of parking, and they're trying to make them as visible as possible and put them in the best locations to be safe for the public to cross Central Street.
So the other 62 will also have the beacon?
Yep, yeah, this one will have the beacon. I know there's a
What
question.
about the one on Woodward? No,
No,
just the two.
yeah, so these ones, we basically only place RFPs where they have high average daily traffic. Central Street has much higher average daily traffic compared to Woodward or Central. The speeds also on Central Street much higher than on Woodward and Carter. So they did warrant RFPs at these locations. And we tend to look at placing these in really areas that are needed, because again, these RFPs are pretty pricey, so I would love to put them everywhere, because, but again, you kind of get the same idea, if you place them everywhere in town, sometimes they become like, oh, it's just one of them, and people stop actually using them. It's kind of like if you oversaturate them, people are like, oh, it's just another one. Where if they're in strategic locations where they're really needed, they really warn the driver saying there's somebody actually here. Any other questions?
I have, are we all done with the easements, sort of? Okay, so, I'm very concerned and disturbed with what has happened with this whole situation. So, first of all, I'd like to thank Chris and perhaps Steve, and civil engineers for their work, and I think they did a lot of good things in response to, different requests. I think the way they worked with the sidewalk, responding to Jane's concerns was great. I think working with Reggie Carter was excellent. So I appreciate that, and I love that. I think that we have overridden a lot of really hard work, in particular Tim Wheeler, who left because he was so troubled. He has been working hard, as we all know, on the planning board, as you know, for years, trying to figure out what to do with the town center. And I think that major aspects of the town center that he and the board and many of us have worked on, we actually started working on this project 9 years ago. And we worked with Central Mass Regional Planning Commission, as you might know. And there was a lot of input that came from that committee. And then with another committee that was working on the specifics of this. So I'm not saying I want to change it. I'm not saying you should do it this way or that way. I'm just concerned that we haven't taken into account the cultural ramifications, the town buildings, the residents were never invited. So I propose that you consider rescinding your vote. And that you open it up to a public forum and that you let us or some of the people here work directly with Chris. And talk about what are the ramifications? Is it more money? I understand you said it's more money, but let's understand what that means. And then let's look at options. For example, I think Paul might have suggested, if it's more money, maybe we just do part of the project. Or maybe we just skip that part, or maybe we have some more money, but let's just look at the options. I feel like the town and the public interest has not been well met by this decision. And I understand, because I was here when we lost our TA, and we also had a big turnover with Lisa joining us and Carolyn joining us. So I'm not blaming anybody, but I'm saying, could we consider doing that? And just sort of backing up a little bit and saying, let's open it up and let's really look at some of the situations. We might end up with the same plan, but it would feel a lot better.
I understand that folks feel like they haven't been listened to, but I can tell you that every person on the board, when we made this decision, we had gotten input from you. I had spent hours with Lauren, I know. I had spent hours with Tim Wheeler. I had solicited input, and so had every person on this board. And sometimes we need to make decisions to make things go forward. And we need to make decisions based on what we think is best for the community as a whole. And I think that's really what we were trying to do, is make a decision that was best for the community as a whole. And part of that is making that downtown a safer space to be, and making it come in on budget, and listening to the recommendations of the engineers that we paid a significant amount of money to do the project for us. Now, it's not that we didn't hear the things that you were saying. It's not that we don't understand that you have concerns, because I absolutely understand that you have concerns. It's just that we had to make the hard decision to try to do what we felt was best for the town, because that's what we were elected to do. But we had, I mean, I spent hours looking at the feedback from Mary. I spent hours looking at, trying to find out how to address Lauren's concerns and how to address the other folks that I talked to, how to address their concerns. So it wasn't that we just ramshot did this, but we do have to take the whole project and the constraints that we're under consideration.
I also, I hear the intent and the earnestness. I can hear that. I'm a little bit feeling like there's a little dishonesty there, however, because you did say to me personally at a town meeting that there would be a public forum about this. And you have said you had talked to people that happened before that. So that there's a lie there. So I'm trying to bridge that gap between you saying you listened to people and that there was no public meeting after that town meeting when I had specific concerns of that the public wasn't being listened to. And I would argue that majority of people here feel like they haven't had their input heard. And so if you feel like you've heard them, but we don't feel like we've been heard, that's a disconnect.
It is, but hearing you and making the decision that you want us to make is not the same thing.
and I'm
It
not
is
asking-
not the same thing.
I'm not asking for you to make the decision that I want. I don't even have the dog that I have in this fight is being heard as a community. A public forum. What's stopping a public forum right now?
We could certainly have a public forum, but we have already paid the engineers to go forward and put a plan together. Any changes at this point forward are going to cost the town significant funds that we do not have.
In what way?
We have paid them to put together the plan that is happening here.
Any changes,
Any changes require
re-engineered, the plans need to be redrawn. All of that needs to happen and that all costs money.
And I hear that.
And there's also the significant aspect that while the church would be happy to work with us, that would add on tons of time, and there is no guarantee at the end of it that they would actually even want to do that. Not to mention they have a really complicated septic system going on, and there's all kinds of reasons that we chose not to go on that other side, because it truly is quite complicated to move poles. It is complicated to rework the entire septic system over at the church because of the gray water runoff that they have. We don't know that they would even at the end of the day want to give up the amount of property that they would have to give up. That is a long-term conversation if that is to happen. And if you remember, when we made that decision, the thing that I suggested was we go ahead and do this right now, and then we talk about doing that other side at a later time, because it is going to take a significant amount of effort to get those types of easements. It's going to take a significant amount of effort to get those poles. It's not something that we can do in the time frame that we have. There is no way that we can do that in the time frame that we have.
It might be worth.
You just said something that I don't think is accurate, because I believe, at one point recently, the engineers said that the sidewalk could be put on the church side, and all it would take is about a foot of church property, which would not interfere with the gray water. And, we measured the road. I mean, it seems like Stein doesn't have road width measurements for the entire plan, which I find kind of odd, because it would be helpful in talking to the public if there was specific. Now, where the curb starts at First Parish, it's 37 feet wide. Minus 5 feet for a sidewalk, 32. You want a travel lane of 11 or 12. You still have plenty of room to park a car at an angle. I mean, just an example of what, I'm not sure it's been looked at. And yes, it's gonna cost money.
It's gonna
But
cost
I,
money, it's
but
gonna
as a
cost time that we
taxpayer,
don't
I don't
have.
wanna spend money on a plan that doesn't serve the town.
It might be worth stopping this plan before we spend more money on something that isn't going to serve the.
We are not spending town money on this. We have a grant from the state
All right,
and we have
Whatever.
ARPA funds that we are utilizing that both have time limits on them.
So, Lisa, if I may, thanks for all the time you put in. I know what public service takes out of you. I also have a finance committee hat. I'm not on the capital planning side, but we're gonna live with what we do here for a long time. And I don't think it's that often that you get this kind of turnout when select board has something on the agenda. I think this is, and I think we're pretty much consistent saying we need to look at this again. And you could be entirely right. There's plenty of opportunity for public input and maybe we fell down. Our obligation as the public, but we're here because we didn't feel heard for the input. And I think, you know, on the time and money equation, I'm gonna go back to it. We only get one shot to do this. We're gonna be living with it for a long time. And I wanna go to your point, Lisa, on safety. And I raised that in the letter I wrote last September after the select board meeting. And Carolyn, I don't know if you've seen that, but I can send it to you. Peg, I think had it, but I sent it to the select board in September. So my concern, I spent a good deal of my time in the center of town, I've been living in the center of town for 26 years. Wanting sidewalks the whole time, so yay, we're talking about sidewalks. And if we can get to that one up Carter Street, yay, even more. Okay, and I ride a bicycle and I walk, and I'll often walk here to town hall, and I have very, very strong opinions about safety in crossing Route 62. And this is simply as a user, either on a bicycle or walking. I am terrified for Lauren's little girl when she goes to school with the crossing that's proposed in these plans down by the Bullard House. It's dangerous. It's dangerous. The safe crossing is at the top of the rise on the church side. That's where you can safely cross 62, because as a pedestrian, I can see the cars and they can see me. The traffic is traveling in from Hudson towards Clinton, westbound traffic. When you get down in that existing crosswalk by Bullard House, Those people can't see you and they're going faster than the traffic going eastbound from Clinton to Hudson. Because that traffic has to navigate the S curve and the hill. Go ahead. So-
My understanding is that there are constraints on where that crosswalk can go. I believe that you've addressed this before, Steve.
We have addressed that. You're referring to the crosswalk that's at the cemetery, correct?
Picture up. Step two.
Yeah. Yeah, that crosswalk is at the best location for both
Theoretically,
approaches.
they're only going 25 miles an hour.
Well, Steve,
No, I've
commented, I never had a chance to, I had never had a chance to talk about my experience when we were here at the September meeting, because Steve kind of had the last word and said, well, it's in my letter, what was it, there would be insufficient sightline for eastbound vehicles, these are the ones going from Clinton to Hudson, at the 30-mile speed limit. So it is a 30-mile speed limit, it's 25, and in that zone, question with the state drop it to 20. But
Yeah,
if
I
I might
think-
point to this picture.
I think we actually understand the issue. I think I need the engineers to address that.
Okay, but this is flat, there's a topography here. And if you're on the church side and you're coming down. This is where I cross 62 as a pedestrian and a cyclist. If I go down here, I feel like my life is in danger. And I'm saying it again, those children that are gonna be walking to Berlin Memorial School, I'm terrified for them down here.
Flashing.
Even with the flasher made it a lot better, but even with the flasher, we really need to cross where we can see the drivers and they can see us. And it is a safety concern, Lisa, that's why.
That's
why I'm here.
that's why I'm asking the engineers to address it, because this is not my,
It's just like. Reality. And we do have experts and I respect expertise. I spent my career working with engineers. But there is a reality here that comes from the actual use in the center of town and what people do. And I'm very concerned about safety with this plan.
So I would say the worst spot, if you're having a car coming eastbound, down this way, the worst spot you could put the crossing. For this, people trying to cross from this side to the church side would be right here. And it's only because you are now on the other side of the apex of the curve, and there's also a tree that sits right here. Right behind the existing crossing now. So what happens is if you're coming eastbound off of this S curve, you have another curve here, the chance of you seeing a pedestrian starting to enter right at this location is very unlikely, A, because of the tree, and 2, you're also making the turn here. If you have a person crossing here, you're at least visible to the westbound traffic pretty easily from a straight shot. If you're sitting here and you look straight down, you can see this crosswalk right here.
You cannot because there's a camp, there's what do you call it?
It camps down, but we're on the flat section here. The worst, the unsafe spot is, I get what you're saying.
Through the chair, can we finish?
I'm saying the worst spot for somebody trying to cross from I guess you call this the south side of Central Street to the north side would be at this location. It's only because you have a tree and you also have a curve. The worst spot you can be crossing is on after the apex of the curve. When you're on the close side, you always want to at least be on the apex is the best spot to put it. Again, I would say I agree. This is not an ideal spot for a crossing at all. But if there's going to be a crossing here, the best spot to put it is on the apex of the curve. Because it allows sightlines not only for westbound traffic, but for eastbound traffic to see equally.
Thank you, Chris. I'm sorry, but I don't think that is the apex, because I walk it. The apex is where I would like the crossing to be.
Well, it's the new apex of the curve that we're putting curve there now.
If I may, through the chair, I'll explain it a different way. Where the walk is now, if a person is standing here. The vehicle here, approximately 150 feet away, can see that person when they step out into the curb. If you move that person over to here, that vehicle cannot see that person until they're too close.
Sorry, Steve, I can't see what you're pointing at.
Stand on the other side.
Put the crosswalk.
Maybe
No.
the other one.
If you wanted to,
You want the crosswalk a little further east than where you.
you crosswalk, the best place for it is right here. Where it is. If you're a vehicle, where my finger is, I have a vehicle going this way and I'm looking at that crosswalk. I can see that person right here in the crosswalk.
approximately 150 or so feet away. If I move that crosswalk over to the other side of the apex of the horizontal curve, this vehicle and the tree, the vehicle's not gonna be able to see the person until they're much closer than that distance of 150 feet, which is the stopping distance for their speed. Don't quote me on 150 feet, but stopping, whatever it is, I need to look it up on the speed, we have checked that. Once you start moving along this curve, the distance gets closer for the person, when they first step on the sidewalk. When speaking about crossing in this direction, you can put it down through here. It's this person, and they step off the curb, and this vehicle going this way.
So, I'm just gonna ask you, Steve, if you ever walk that.
Yes.
I think the other thing I want.
Through the chair, yeah, it seems like there's so much confusion and concern with the public on this. But I asked the board, could you reconsider? Maybe have one more public forum about the design?
I won't answer them. If I'm gonna be liable for something, am I gonna take the opinion of professional engineers that know the traffic laws and rules and regulations?
I'm not talking about that.
But-
I'm talking about the overall.
The overall, what's wrong with the plan, other than you don't like where the sidewalk is?
No,
That's the only thing you-
Actually, I'm okay with the plan overall. I'm just
Well,
saying,
there you go.
But the confusion in the room seems like people weren't listening to.
In what
This is
manner?
something got to do with the town. This is the
In what
town.
manner?
You just heard.
What
three
manner,
people
so what are you
say-
confused about?
You just three people say they weren't, their opinion wasn't heard, wasn't listened to. So I'm asking.
Well,
would you
what's the
consider going back
specific?
To the public again.
What's the specific concern?
Would
Other
you not-
than,
Would you not listening tonight?
what would you change?
I'm
Well, if we're not gonna change the plan, why would you go through the process?
Same plan.
I-
We might finish up the same plan.
You know,
We were promised a public forum and it didn't happen.
well,
I think that's.
but everybody had their say tonight.
And there's nothing, you're not.
We invited.
We got shut down tonight, saying that.
Well, what would you
was being
change?
shut.
What would you change? Other than the sidewalk, what would you change?
Sidewalk is huge, I think there's a crosswalk.
I disagree with the sidewalk. These people are professional, they do this for a
I
living.
understand, but they don't live here.
That,
Textbook and computers are great, you need them, but
wow.
live a day in a life.
In
I'm
a
sorry,
public-
there's reality and there's science.
Well,
I
Okay.
honestly wish that we could make everyone happy. I seriously do. But I think no matter what we do, some folks are gonna be unhappy. They're gonna be unhappy with the way we do things. We are doing the best that we can up here. We are doing the best that we can to make the best decision for the town. If there are no more questions about the easement, I think we can, or easements, I think we can probably wrap up for the evening because I don't think that we are gonna get anywhere else this evening.
That there comes a time when you have to decide. When you have to decide, do you lose the money? Or do you drag it out? And they made the decision to use the money, to not lose the money. But for me, regardless of any of that, I would not have voted to put the street closer to the houses.
You
I
also
would-
didn't hear all the input that came from all.
I very much heard tonight also the desire to have more frontage in front of the Bullard House and 19 Carter, 1870. I agree that that would have been lovely, but I also understand why it's not happening. It's not changing it from what it is. It's not taking anything away. And the reality of gaining that space doesn't seem to be fiscally responsible or possible in a timely fashion.
I've been at a couple meetings that Kristen held, and there were approximately 15 people at those meetings. 15 people do not speak for the entire town. With that, you as the public have every opportunity to come to any select board meeting and bring any topic to us. But yet it only seems that when something happens and there are a group of concerned citizens, all of us, all of a sudden now speak for the entire town, and that I do not agree with. You have a responsibility to share your opinion with us. Doing it at one meeting and expecting us to stop and change because of the will of a handful of people, it doesn't work. It doesn't work.
I can tell you, you want to know what will happen if we have a public forum? I can about guarantee you what will happen. These same people that are in this room tonight will show up at that and no one else. The same people that always show up. The town is almost 3,000 people, 3,400 people. So it's always the same people in the room. It would be the exact same people in the room that are here tonight. Am I wrong?
No, you're not. And I was trying to go through and find some information from Kristen back a year and a half ago, and the information that I found is the same exact information that was provided. So nothing has changed in that time period. The concerns that were brought up then, which was at town hall, you were at Evie, Jane Sawyer was there, police was there, fire was there. There were a few other people. Is the same exact information a year and a half later. Nothing has changed. No, if you oppose, then you must propose, and your propose just can't be, oh, we'll just have another meeting. As Carolyn and Lisa have said, we are up against time constraints. We are up against budget constraints. The town doesn't have a lot of extra money besides ARPA and grant money to put into this. And that's truly what it needs to come down to, is a financial decision. I would love to make everyone happy in the town. It's not gonna happen. You have a responsibility to bring your information to us ahead of time, not just show up at a meeting and say, you need to stop and respectfully change your opinion. That's my opinion. I do not speak for Carolyn or Lisa or Jeff or Dee.
But to your point, we never got the meeting, and Kristen told us that it was going to happen. So our ability to input this process was limited. And you talk about a handful of people making this decision. I'm looking at an even smaller handful of people.
So
making
you're,
a decision.
so you're telling me that the only way you're going to come to the board is if you have a special invite by the board?
No,
You,
I'm saying
as a resident, have every right to come to us at any time. And this is the only time that people come, is when there is an issue that they don't agree with.
So if a TA promises a meeting and it doesn't happen, it's our fault?
I never said that. Those
Well,
words
yeah, you
never came out of my
implied it.
mouth.
You implied it.
I did not.
We are where we are.
Yep.
This is where we are. I don't think the vote would go any differently. I don't think, frankly, we have the best plan here. We have the best plan for going forward, in the opinion of all the people that are elected to make these decisions. Having another meeting isn't going to change that at this juncture, because it's not going to change the facts that are on the table.
I'm clear about all of the logisticness, we got.
Logistics.
Logistics, thank you, about town government. But if, like, going forward, could we, so the select board is not going to rescind their vote about this?
I don't believe they are.
So.
I believe I could hold another vote right now and we would make the same decision, because the facts have not changed in the situation.
Right, and so just for my clarity, because I'm not sure about the process, is going forward, are we able to then petition against that, or is this?
This project, I believe, is moving forward.
As a citizen of the town, is there space to petition? And would that stop it?
I would think so.
I guess.
We're in the middle of the project. The project is moving forward.
I was just asking as an point, someone who know about that.
Okay. I will, end of year.
End of what year?
26.
26, and that is, that's the
$153,000. That
No,
is,
no, no.
that is the grant.
And that was already an extension.
The 20, yeah,
So if we ask for another one, there is no guarantee that we would get one.
that would be the third.
I also want to bring up that I know Jeff had asked me to rerun the numbers just on the cost estimate from what we submitted about a year ago. And yeah, we didn't change anything, but the price of the project just went up 30,000 just because of the economy we're in. So I would say, no matter what you do, even extending this, it might cost $650,000 right now. There's a high chance in a year it could be 700,000. It happens in our products a lot. So I'd say no matter what you do, I'd make a decision sooner than later, because it could become where even this design gets too expensive for the town. And it's nothing that we design, it's how contractors bid out items based on a whole bunch of different things, including big one is oil prices, and everything we use in this is related to oil.
I will also say my experience with grants through the Conservation Commission is you don't always get them. And when you do, if you don't spend the money responsibly, and then you don't get them again. So we have a reputation, at least my understanding is that we have a reputation of doing a good job with the grant money we receive. We don't want to squander that.
So these are all things that we take into consideration when we try to make good decisions for the whole town.
Carolyn, on the grant money, I'm also very conscious that that money is taxpayer money as well. And just because a grant is there saying spend me doesn't mean that we have to spend it, it is taxpayer money. So I come back to that point, and we're gonna live this a long time. And as a resident of the center of town, I'm pretty darn unhappy with that thought.
I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Can I ask you a specific question, related to the?
Ma'am?
I mean,
Mm-hmm. No, for new
in some
member,
ways it's-
you seem to be changing a lot of meetings for you.